My name is Henry David Thoreau. Well, in 1813 I went to Harvard, returned in 1817, and was delighted to find that Mr. Emerson, that most wonderful philosopher of our times, had chosen Concord to live. I was even more excited when I received an invitation to come to meet him. Oh, I was very nervous, but I needn't be. He had this charm about him of being able to put anyone at ease. And one of the questions he asked me at the very beginning, "Henry, where is your journal?" Well, that was the best piece of advice he could ever give me, because he said it was so important that you never know when thoughts will appear out of nowhere and disappear almost as quickly. But each day you keep your journal. And so by the time I ended my life, I had 14 volumes, over 2 million words. My brother, who I loved more than anyone else, passed away. I was beside myself. Life seemed to be without meaning. And I was searching, what is life all about? And then I decided perhaps I should turn my back on all the artificial aspects of society, of culture. Just go to Walden Pond for a couple of years to see what nature at its very basic elemental level might have to teach me. And so, 1845, a little cabin, 10 by 15, on the most beautiful wilderness lake, only 60 acres, but what a beautiful spot. Well, people warned me. They said, "You know, Henry, it's not good for a person to live alone. You'll be too lonely." And I wondered myself if it would be healthy. But I didn't have to worry. What a wonderful experience. You know that pond? I mean, every second, every moment of the day, it changed its appearance. The sunrises, the sunsets, the breezes, the different birds, the animals, the different reflections of light. Oh, what a glorious, you could never get tired of it. Well, I named myself the chief inspector of snowstorms and rainstorms, but no weather stopped me. In the deepest snow, I might go for 8 or 10 miles just to make a visit with a beech tree or with an oak tree that I had become friends with. I also learned that you have to be patient. You know, one time I spent 8 hours standing still just watching duck eggs hatch. And what a wonderful experience to see the various ways these little ducks came into being, how they broke their shells, how they managed to struggle for that first breath of air. You'd never get this unless you have the patience to sit and to listen, to watch. Actually, one of the things I found most valuable was my night walks. You know, it's a different world completely. To see the world with moonlight and shadow, and you've got to see it in all its various glorious reflections. One of the things when you're sauntering I would recommend highly, and that is when you're out for a walk, don't be thinking of what affairs you might have at work or at home. Because what business do you have being in the wilderness or in the woods if your mind is somewhere else? Just empty your mind and realize that anything that you see will never be exactly what it first appears to be. Take the time to study it, to learn it, to see what deeper lessons it may have to teach. And if I was to give advice, it would be this: simplify your lives. Simplify, simplify. At my funeral, actually, Mr. Emerson, who preached it, said that I was the richest man he knew because I knew exactly all the things that I didn't need. Well, I passed away in 1864, only 44 years of age. Passed away from tuberculosis. But I didn't have an unhappy death. In fact, one person said he never seen a person die that died with more pleasure and at greater peace. Because I didn't think I was dying, just changing like everything else in nature. Well, if I was to leave you with two things, the things I'm most convinced of is that in wildness is the preservation of the earth. Nature is our health, our preservation. I'd come to the conclusion that Adam Smith, who wrote Wealth of Nations, probably one of the most influential books of my time that I studied at Harvard University, was wrong. Rather than being a necessity to accumulate all kinds of creature comforts that he suggested we needed, they were actually an obstacle. In fact, I had come to feel sorry for people who inherited farms and other things. They thought they owned these things, but instead what was happening, these things owned them. Just think of the amount of time they had to give of their lives just to manage and to take care of these things. They were living lives of quiet desperation. No time at all, mortgaged their lives for things where they could have been using their time to fulfill their lives, to seek out after those things that the very core of their personality yearned to discover. And so I came to the point after 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days at the pond that I now felt obligated to leave Walden Pond, because some people think that I was only a lover of trees, but I know, as you know, that both nature and society, the human culture, has to blend together, both important. And one of, I think, what I hope will be one of my lasting contributions was my thoughts about civil disobedience. I actually spent a night in jail because I refused to pay the tax. Why? Because these taxes were being used by my government to subsidize slave owners at the expense of our fellow human beings. They were also using my tax dollar to fight an unjust war against Mexicans. And so I spent one night in jail. It's interesting that Emerson came to visit me when he heard I was in jail, and he said, "Henry, what in the world are you doing there?" And I said, "Mr. Emerson, what in the world are you doing out there? For unless people of goodwill stand up against bad laws that our government creates, we will not have a just society." Now, I don't mean by this any kind of terrorism, any kind of violence, or just non-discriminate disobeying of the law. But there are some times when our human conscience tells us that the laws that have been passed by man violates everything that we believe. And in those cases, we have the loyal legal right to disobey, but to do it peacefully and not behind the scenes, not in secret. Stand up and speak and do what we believe and be willing to pay the price, even if that means going to jail. Just think, I spent one night in jail. What if 100 men had spoke up against this and spent their night in jail? What if 10,000 were to do this? Wouldn't you think governments would certainly change their mind and look at the wishes of people of good conscience who will not tolerate the things that violate higher law? And so I wrote a book called Civil Disobedience. And I'm told that Mahatma Gandhi, as well as Martin Luther King, both read this book and used it as a platform, used it as their design on how to conduct against governments that had been repressive and was trying to bring forth things that they could not tolerate. But they did it according to the principles of nonviolence, peaceable assembly, but willing to pay the price. And I think I should be remembered as much for these contributions as for my contributions about the value of nature. You cannot separate society from nature. The two things go together. They're not separate. If someone was to ask me, Henry David Thoreau, how would you like to be remembered in history? I'd say, not for a single thing. I wouldn't want to be remembered simply as one who loved nature and said that it was essential for our well-being, nor would I want to be seen as only one who promoted social justice, because to me, the two things go hand in hand, that you cannot separate them. And I think some people that are environmentalists will probably look at me because of my work at Walden Pond. Those who are politically active will probably look to the works of Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi, following my book, Civil Disobedience. I think the two things, social justice and nature, go hand in hand.